Now, first up, we got Muhammad Naimov versus Mairon Santos. Now, I got to be honest with you guys. Out of every single fight on this entire card, this is one of the fights that I'm probably the least excited about just because I'm not super high on either one of these guys. And, you know, you look at Muhammad Naimov, he's had double the amount of UFC experience compared to Mairon Santos. You could look at that and say, okay, you know, why is he this big of an underdog? We just haven't seen him perform that well against a high level of competition. Whereas Mairon Santos, honestly, we haven't seen too much of that either, but we've seen from Muhammad Naimov, when he takes these steps up in level of competition, he hasn't performed the best. And that's one thing I want to talk about. We're going to go over in this video. New kind of style for these breakdowns. I'm going to go over some of their most recent fights. Got the screen. Hopefully you guys like this. Hopefully you guys can see this pretty well. But yeah, I just want to go over some of the recent fights and kind of talk about what has stood out to me from both guys in terms of the positive and the negative, and kind of how it's affecting my picks overall for these fights. So we can break down Naimov first. As you can see on the left, I have all of his most recent fights. Now you can see with his record, he's performing decently well against a lower level of competition. Guys like a Bogdan, a Con Ofli, not the best level, but when he's kind of takes that step up in competition against a guy like a Felipe Lima, we saw he got submitted in the third round there, and it wasn't a terrible look per se, you know, because Felipe Lima is a very high level guy. I don't know, his record at the time was 12-1. I believe he's what now, like 13-2 after he just took that loss to Payton Talbott. Very competitive back and forth fight though. It was a 29-28 loss that he took in that spot against Payton Talbott, so I don't really hold that loss too much against Muhammad Naimov. You know, it wasn't the worst look. It's just we can look at his record and say, okay, when this guy's getting those steps up in competition, he's not performing the best. Even if you go back a couple fights in this fight against Nathaniel Wood, that fight was crazy. Nathaniel Wood, that fight as a whole was crazy. Nathaniel Wood should have got at least a draw in that spot because Muhammad Naimov, it was, I forget if it was in Abu Dhabi, it was overseas. He had the judging going for him. He had the ref going for him in that spot. Muhammad Naimov commits 2 fence grabs. He commits 2 nut taps. So it's like he committed 4 fouls. Not a single point was taken in a fight that should have been a draw. It ended up going his way. So it's like, I look at his record and I can see every time that he's stepped up and that level of competition has gone above a guy like a Bogdan or a Con Ofli, he's not really performed all that well. So that's when I look at this line and I can see that, okay, Muhammad Naimov plus 205 underdog. I can kind of see where they're going at with this. But if you look at Mairon Santos, I don't think he's really warranted to be this big of a favorite. Now, in his most recent fights, we could see when he fought Sodiq Yusuff, I do rate that win decently, but it's Sodiq Yusuff in the 2025 version of him, not the best look. You know, it's more of a washed Sodiq Yusuff that wasn't a peak in his prime, hungry Sodiq Yusuff. So I don't really want to put a ton of weight behind that fight. Although he got the win, you know, fair, he got it. He looked good in that spot. It's not the same version that we saw from Sodiq Yusuff years ago. So I don't have a ton of emphasis put on that fight in terms of how I'm making my pick for this one. And before that, in the Francis Marshall fight, you guys can look it up. It's a really cool website. It's called, I believe it's like MMAdecisions.com or something like that. You can go back and they have every single MMA decision that's ever happened from like big events like the UFC, PFL, stuff like that, big organizations. But every single UFC fight, they have it on there. And you can see where the analysts score, or you can see the main judges, like the 3 judges that score. Then you can see the like, I don't know, like related analysts and like journalists. They have like usually 10 to 15 of them where they give their own scores, and then they have a public pool where they can see where all the public votes come in. People can go on the website and vote for who they thought won the exact score. They can score round by round. It's super cool. If you go and look at the MMA decisions for that fight against Francis Marshall, Mairon Santos versus Francis Marshall, everyone had it going against Mairon Santos in that spot. I believe it was 92% of people scored it for Francis Marshall in that spot. So it just goes to show Mairon Santos, yes, you can look at his stats here. You can see he's technically 3-0 in the UFC, but however, it shouldn't be. He should be 2-1. So it's like Francis Marshall is a good level opponent. However, he's not like some world beater. And although it was a back and forth fight, we just saw, I don't want to say lapses, but we saw negative signs from Mairon Santos in that spot. You know, defensively in the striking, he was a bit crazy at times, in the sense of he got clipped multiple times in that fight. I believe it was early in round 1 or later in round 1 or later in round 2, first 2 rounds. Francis Marshall drops Mairon Santos. It did not look good, so we've seen his chin exposed too. So it's like there are a bunch of red flags for both guys in this fight that I can't really be too confident in either side. My main, I guess, focal point for that's kind of pushing me towards Mairon Santos is just the fact that he's 25 years old. Honestly, he's 25 years old. He's going to get better and better with every single fight. And although he's not fighting the absolute highest level of competition in the UFC so far, he's still looking pretty good, because I still rate wins like a Francis Marshall. I still rate that pretty well. Even Sodiq Yusuff, although the 2025 version of him is pretty washed, he might be mentally checked out at this point, even though he's not that old. I think he's only like, 31 or 32. Still, it's just not the same level of win, but he has looked good at 25 years old. So you got to figure, if he's looking this good so far in the UFC at 25, we're going to see him improve from fight to fight to fight. Whereas with Muhammad Naimov, I don't really know if I can say the same with him. So I got to have a slight lean for Mairon Santos in this spot, but I'm really not that confident. I don't know why the line is quite this wide. It doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. If something's standing out for you guys in this spot, let me know. I'm not really connecting the dots on this to see why Mairon Santos is such a huge favorite. We could see Muhammad Naimov come in with a really heavy wrestling and grappling game plan that could prevent or kind of cause some type of troubles for Mairon Santos. So overall, low confidence pick. I'm not super confident in Mairon Santos, but I guess I got to lean his way. Maybe he's going to be a bit quicker in the striking. He should be a bit ahead on the feet. So we'll have to see how this one goes. But yeah, not really confident either way. But the pick's got to be Mairon Santos.